Welcome back to the Old Man Media Podcast with your hosts.
Paul Buchanan.
No, I'm Paul Buchanan.
You did that last time.
I wasn't being serious. I wasn't saying let's make a thing of that every time.
I'm Will Ragg.
He's Will Ragg. I'm Paul Buchanan.
Welcome to episode 2.
Episode 2 of the Jonathan Richman Boogaloo. If you remember last episode, we spoke of the New York Daily News writer who saw them at a gig in Cambridge and would write a review that would bring them a lot of traction. Lillian Roxon was her name, and they brought a lot of followers in New York, but also a lot of interest from labels.
Okay.
So this is 1972. The band's next months would be spent weighing up different offers from management and labels. Why are you doing that outside the door when we're recording a podcast?
How dare you? How unprofessional, Miles.
Gave him a good telling off. Right. Important listening before this episode for any listeners following the story. Listen to the Modern Lovers debut, the one with the blue circle kind of love hearty thing. Modern Lovers. On
Not
the
one I listen to.
Not whatever you listen to. Not whatever bootleg back market Modern Lovers tape you listen to. The one with the ring on it and on a black background. That's kind of just spilled my tea.
How many spilt drinks has there been on this podcast?
There's been too many casualties on this pod, man.
This rug has been through it.
I have to throw it out soon. That's going to be integral kind of for the story and that we're going through today. So, 3 different big labels, major labels, were interested in the Lovers: A&M, Warner Bros, and Asylum. Matthew Kaufman is an important name to remember. Flew out to see the band with Alan Mason of A&M, and they made an offer, but they were rejected. And then, in a music industry first, A&M and Warner Bros linked up and paid for the travel and hotel expenses of the band to go to California and see what the label had to offer. So they were operating on a mutually beneficial kind of deal, saying that, well, we both want to see this band and sign this band. Let's get them out here.
It's half the cost for each of you.
Half the cost for each of them, but also it means the competition is halved. But I guess it already was.
But what the goal was they both signed them.
So they flew them out to record some demos and stuff. So they would record a session with A&M and record with Warner Bros, as well as perform live, so they could see their live.
Okay.
But apparently the attitude of the band, the Modern Lovers attitude, was kind of contributed to this because they believed that they were different and should be treated as such. They weren't your average band.
Right, okay. But then the label saw this.
I think it was a part and parcel kind of.
Right.
They could see that maybe this would impress John and the boys. It'd be like, make them feel special. But John Cale was the A&R man at Warner Brothers, and obviously we've talked about the connection between the Velvet Underground and the Modern Lovers last episode.
Yeah, I didn't know John Cale was like
Yeah, I think after Velvet Underground, that's what he did. And he said when he was A&R at Warner Brothers, someone kept sending him a tape, and it was a small reel with Hospital on it. And he said he thought it was interesting because it was so tentative and unsure. I thought it was great that someone could just be very weak and use that quality. So he said, I put them in a studio in Pasadena that had a pipe organ, and they did what is now on the record, the Modern Lovers record.
Right, what, the Hospital?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's an actual pipe organ you're hearing on that.
Cool. So what's an A&R man?
Artist and representation.
Right,
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's just liaising between artists and label, as well as other stuff. So within a week in California, the band recorded 2 sessions. One with John Cale at Whitney Studios and the other with Alan Mason and Robert Appiah at Clover Studios. For Mason and Appiah, they recorded 3 songs, 2 of which would appear on the Modern Lovers debut album, Modern World and Girlfriend. The third one, Dignified and Old, would be added to re-release versions. Gets a bit complicated with the re-releases because the band the album was released multiple times. So there's different kind of track listings and chip chops of which studios are from where, and but I think from my research there's the Rhino one seems to be the most widely available in like streaming and stuff nowadays, which goes up to like 8 or 9 tracks. I think it's like Dignified and Old, Modern World and all of that. Yeah, a modern world, dignified or an old sort of both serve as rejections of the live fast and die young kind of rock and roll mentality over, quite cool sounding music, kind of the juxtaposition that the modern lovers
Yeah.
live inside of. They sing of old world values and, a rejection of cynicism, and a rejection of a lack of self-respect. And the modern world is slightly ironic, where it's like, I'm in love with the modern world now. Put down your cigarette and drop out of BU, Boston University. I feel like Jonathan was very sort of certain in being referential to his immediate surroundings, even if, he probably wasn't thinking this far ahead, but, if you're an average listener now, you're like, I don't know what the fuck BU means.
Yeah, I had no idea.
So while those recordings at with A&M were a powerful showcase of their sound, it was the John Cale sessions that really sort of succeeded in capturing the band's live energy, because I think they literally just ran live sets with him, and about 2/3 of that material made it onto the Modern Lovers album. I think if it's pretty much like tracks 1 to 5, like Roadrunner, Astral Plane, She Cracked, all of those that have that kind of like almost Dawsy, that's kind of with the heavy like synth and organ kind of focus, all of that stuff was from that Cale demo recording session. She Cracked is probably their most sort of abrasive song, I'd say. It's almost Stooges like She Cracked. Na, 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 na.
Sorry, what year would this have been?
1972.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was post Stooges.
Yeah, Stooges have a big impact on music.
Yeah, I think
That and Sabbath.
Yeah.
Was Sabbath 70? 71?
Maybe.
I can't remember.
Yeah. She Cracked tells the story of a promising relationship torn apart by the contrasting self-destruction and self-development of the two partners. From Jonathan's perspective, of course, it's always like, the girl is like into the counterculture druggy scene, and he's like,
So, kind of getting incel vibes from it.
Not necessarily. I don't know. It's a weird kind of the weird self-righteousness that he had because of his lifestyle and his rejection of the rock and roll lifestyle. But in a time and scene where that was kind of if you weren't like down, then you were kind of like a stick in the mud.
Yeah.
It's almost like the punk thing for him to do, to kind of just be like...
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I do see what you're saying, that it was punk to not be punk in those days. But, like, also rock and roll was, like, a big change in the culture. Like, it was, a big change from what any other music that came before it. And it was, like, really abrasive and everything. But then embracing rock and roll, but then being kind of traditional world values, it's very hard to sort of like
it's
dichotomy,
a weird juxtaposition of a person to be in, and we'll go further into it, I guess. Some stuff happens that can kind of confirms Jonathan's views, I guess, on the rock and roll scene, but on the John Cale sessions as well, Pablo Picasso, definitely like a high point, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Great song.
That album.
Yeah, I think even if people haven't listened to like a full Modern Lovers album, they might have heard of Pablo Picasso or...
And when you hear like the Lou Reed influence on Jonathan, I feel like that song is very like Lou Reed lyrics, like very sort of wry, a little bit like, Pablo Picasso never tried to pick up girls and get called an arsehole or whatever.
Yeah. But is that even true? I don't
know.
It's very odd, isn't it?
It's more about Jonathan's view of Pablo Picasso and the art, and he does for his career. He has a song on Vincent Van Gogh, and he has a song on Salvador Dali, and he like heightens the mythology and the kind of romanticism around these artists. It kind of just that's who he is. He's a romantic, At the end of the day, like he likes the larger than life, and he loves the tortured artist narrative.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on that song, they all switched instruments. So, like, I think Jonathan stayed on the guitar, but everyone else, like Jerry Harrison, went on the drums, and someone else went on the bass. Which, if you know the story of Jerry Harrison's later career with the Talking Heads, they did the same thing to write "This Must Be the Place."
Oh yeah.
I don't know what the conversation was like in that room. I know Brian Eno was with them, and they all switched, and Jerry went from the synth to something else, Yeah,
Do you go into how he went from Modern Lovers to Talking Heads later, or is that not just...
we'll see.
All right.
I'm going to say no because it's about Jonathan Richman.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think that would have been interesting to know.
Maybe. I mean,
Because the first album came out 77 for Talking Heads?
Yeah, so you're in 72 now. So
Yeah,
you've got
so it's
quite a while
quite a
still.
while, yeah.
And they would, well, they'll. Anyway, but yeah, I wonder if that conversation came up where he was like, yeah, we did this with Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But, with The Lovers, it represented a rejection of musical virtuosity in favour for performances that came from the heart. Also, interestingly, if Jerry wasn't on the keys, then it must have been someone else beating that piano within an inch of its life on Pablo Picasso. And if you've ever listened to the Velvet Underground and Nico, and you've heard some of the piano work, like on Waiting for the Man,
Yeah.
then you might realise that maybe a certain Mr. John Cale had quite a knack for playing the piano like that, so maybe he played on that track.
Is that a hypothesis?
That's a little rumour. But yeah, after those sessions, and they were very successful in terms of the fact that they came out with all this material that they were quite happy with. They did want to work with Cale, but they still weren't sure if they wanted to sign with Warner Brothers. While in LA, they did a couple of shows, and I found it quite interesting. They did a cover of Bobby Fuller's Four's "I Fought the Law," which at this point hadn't been released by The Clash. This was a few years before The Clash
Wow.
did it. So it's just another one of these things where it's like almost like that proto-punk kind of thing where it's like they were so ahead of the curve.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, though, I think it probably is like a little bit of similarity with them and The Clash in that The Clash, I mean, they were punk, obviously, but like not like Sex Pistols punk. They were like a bit more straight-laced. I mean, I remember reading a story about The Clash and Sex Pistols shared a bill, and Joe Strummer had to stop the Sex Pistols going out with Nazi armbands on, because he was like, no, we won't perform with you if you do that. And it's just like the Sex Pistols were like controversy for the sake of controversy, and then Joe Strummer was like, no, this is for a fucking reason.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Strummer was more like politically minded, maybe,
Yeah.
and he wrote sort of quite in tune
Whereas
protest
fucking
music.
Johnny Rotten is fucking... Have you seen him now?
Yeah, they're all provocateurs.
But he's
at the
he's
time.
fully reformed now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. The Sex Pistols were a manufactured plant.
You think?
Absolutely, yeah. That's
Oh.
the whole thing. The McLaren, now I can't remember the manager's name. He basically picked up four guys who couldn't play their instruments very well, saw the punk movement happening.
Yeah.
He was like, right, we're going to get Vivienne Westwood, a fashion person. We're going to dress you up, and we're going to put you out on stage, and we're going to, record this like album, and like it did help that there were little shits like Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
It kind of was like the punk sort of energy sort of worked itself off the press sort of made itself. But it was completely manufactured. It's, the most unpunk thing ever, really.
Yeah.
But
Well, maybe the most punk thing is being not punk.
The most punk thing was to be completely manufactured, completely in it for the money.
Yeah, that, I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I like the music.
I think Ramones for me still remain the best punk band.
Well, funny you say that, because coming up next, Danny Fields and Steve Paul. I mentioned them at the end of the last episode. They met Jonathan at the factory with friends of Andy Warhol's. But Danny Fields signed the Stooges, and he also managed the Ramones.
Wow.
So yeah, they were interested in the Lovers and still wanted them to kind of consider their offers. So they rehearsed at a house in Connecticut. They set up at Danny Fields and Steve Paul's house like a rehearsal space. They also played some shows. One of them supporting Edgar Winter, in which they were booed off stage. This made Danny Fields and Steve Paul do a complete 180 though, ceasing their interest in the band because a friend of Steve Paul's said they had no commercial potential. Steve Paul was like an old school music head as well. I did a bit of research on him. The old school sort of manager biz, like his Wikipedia profiles in like black and white.
Oh right.
And he managed like Johnny Winters, I think. Was his most successful.
So
I feel like if you're like 60, you'd be like Johnny Winters.
I feel like I recognise the name.
Wit.
Great
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, Johnny Winter, Cameron Winter's great granddaddy.
I think maybe that's what I was thinking of actually.
Further adding to the psyop Nepo Baby fire.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So the band also recorded music with. There's another artist called Kim Fowley. He's got like he's a producer. I think he's more known for his production works, but he made so many albums and toured and was like a great success of his own. And he recorded a load of tapes with the Lovers through like friends and friends introduced them. They became sort of good mates. These tapes found their way into the hands of a guy called Jack Nietzsche, who
he was in the Fred Neil story.
He produced the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
He produced Neil Young. Like, if you need like any creds on this guy, he produced Let It Bleed. He produced Aftermath. He produced Between the Buttons. He even produced Emotional Rescue. And with Neil, he produced After the Gold Rush, Harvest Moon. You give me that fucking CV, I'm like, yeah, okay,
that's crazy.
You've got like the best, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Any credibility. And he was quoted as saying, "This is the most significant rock and roll band in the world. This record will change rock and roll."
What, Modern Lovers?
On the tapes that they recorded with Kim Fowley, which a couple of those made it onto the album. Although I feel like they're usually on the repressed ones, not on the OG. So yeah, it's an interesting little...
Yeah. Reminds me of... I told you that Sam Phillips story. Sam Phillips was the Sun record.
Yeah.
He obviously signed Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis. Had this huge roster of stars, and he always said that the best artist he ever signed was Howlin' Wolf. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. He was cool.
It's just great. There's something like elemental, like that gravelly voice of his that was just transcended, sort of.
But I also think that music's so subjective.
Yeah,
It's just, yeah. Marty Thau was a manager of the New York Dolls, and he was asked by Warner Brothers to take them on. And the Lovers were big fans of the New York Dolls, so they were interested.
What's the New York Dolls' big song? What's the one, like, they have one big one, don't they? What's it called?
Don't know.
Oh, because I've not listened to a lot of the New York Dolls, but I've listened to that one song.
Trash.
Yeah, that's the one. Trash! Don't pick it up.
I need to listen to that. I like Johnny... What's his another Johnny something? Johnny Thunders?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's like... some of his solo stuff's kind of cool. The Marty Thau came to stay with them for 3 days and like hung out with them, sat in rehearsals, and after those days he turned down managing them because he said, for one, he was preoccupied with the Dolls, but his other reasons were he came out with the feeling that Jonathan was very far removed from your typical rock star. He didn't think he was living in the real world. He had these thoughts like, if you do concerts, you have to turn the lights on in the theatre, off-the-wall ideas about how he wanted to reach people. And in turn, the Lovers sort of felt that Marty Thau was a bit too forceful for them.
Yeah.
And after several attempts of finding a manager, the task was getting more and more impossible. And Ernie Brooks said that the perfect person would have to be a philosopher, a poet, the most honest person in the world, and a good businessman. Which...
yeah, he's just plucked one of those out of the sky.
It's just a bit of an oxymoron, really. I don't think a good businessman can be an honest person.
Yeah, well, true, yeah.
Bad luck didn't end there for the Modern Lovers. In autumn of 1972, Miss Christine, she was a member of Frank Zappa's groupie band called Girls Together Outrageously. I hate that Frank Zappa weases his way into everything.
Fucking Frank Zappa having a fucking groupie band.
Yeah, he's the lamest guy I've ever met. Well, I've not met him. If I did, he would be.
Lamest guy I've never met.
They were staying in... so this group was staying in the band's house. Oh, no, sorry, just Miss Christine of this groupie band was staying in the band's house. And the band were close to her, but she was more of Kim Fowley's friend. And he said, the fact that I knew her made her okay with the guys, basically. Like, they let her into the house. And he also said that he thought the whole band had a crush on her. And he recalls her being very different from the image shared by the GTOs. Lenny Kaye said she was a lovely, lovely person. I remembered her being somewhat akin to an angel. But the morning after she arrived at the house, she was found dead.
What?
Overdosing on a cocktail of prescription drugs.
What, in the Modern Lovers? Jesus.
Yeah.
Those guys weren't doing drugs, were they?
Well, no. Apparently the story was Ernie and Jerry stayed up with her until like 4 or 5 a.m. and then they went to bed. And then the next day she was dead at 11 a.m. So I don't know what was happening. There's nothing's really to disclose. We don't know if some of the band were doing drugs or if maybe they didn't have a clue about it. It was sort of rumoured that she was on her last legs anyway, and it had been hypothesised perhaps she had chosen the band's house as a last attempt to save herself, Although
Oh,
some people
shit.
thought she chose it as the last place to die.
Right. Well, and it was a suicide.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Jesus. Wow.
So the band's house in Cohasset, Massachusetts, Boston, it's near Boston, is a rich, exclusive community intolerant of rock and roll at the best of times. And the band had promised on signing their lease that there would be no drugs in the house. So 3 days after that incident, they were thrown out on their ass.
Oh, shit.
Also, for a band that's whole rock and roll cred took strength and rejection of drugs, this was a big hit to them.
Yeah.
Ernie believes that this incident somehow psychologically destroyed them. And through John Felice's eyes, it was Jonathan who was the most affected. He seemed completely freaked out.
Yeah, I can imagine Jonathan being fucking distraught at that.
He became very quiet. It was hard to exactly say what was on his mind, but he didn't want to talk about it at all. Jerry, John, and David found another house in Arlington, North Boston. That's John Felice, not Jonathan. Jonathan had always hoped to isolate the positive elements from those that were negative in rock and roll. But this incident sort of made him indicate that maybe this wasn't possible without a deliberate move away from its centre. On October 7th, the Modern Lovers played a new song, I'm Dropping My Friends One by One, brackets, because I would rather be alone. Jonathan was emphasising the quieter elements of the band, and at the end of a version of Plea for Tenderness was singing so far away from the microphone that it wasn't being picked up by it, but was still able to be heard. And this communication without amplification really enamoured Jonathan and was an approach that would estrange him from the rest of the band. New Year's 1972 marked a rather notable performance for the band. They were playing alongside New York Dolls and an early incantation of suicide in New York, I believe. And they broke down on their way to the gig, and they needed to find a new starter motor. So Ernie had to go from garage to garage looking for one. It's New Year's Eve, and there were so many drunk driving wrecks, so it took them ages to get a mechanic to help out. They finally got there, and they got on stage at 3:30 a.m. Jonathan came on in penny loafers, white socks, white t-shirt, and chino star-pressed jeans. He prefaced "Somebody I Care About."
Just imagining getting him up there at 3:30 a.m. sober as hell in penny loafers and all.
Oh, it's just so funny. It's just one of those characters where he just doesn't give a fuck. He just does what he wants to do.
Yeah, it feels like a character from a comedian or something. It's just like, that's crazy. It's even funnier that it's just him.
Yeah, everyone else dressed a bit more hip.
Yeah.
He just sort of was so defiant in his need to avoid the uniform of the times. And he always would be, to be honest. But it's one of them where it's like, it's timeless looks. Like, the older he got, the more he grew into his look.
I mean, let's be fair.
When you see him and he's like 40 or 50 in penny loafers, and you're like, hell yeah, bro. It's like in Europe playing an acoustic set, and you're like, yeah. He prefaced Dignified and Old with sort of just talking about the song being about dying, not dying young, and waiting until they're dignified and old, and this was met with quite a few laughs from the audience. But then they played She Cracked, and some of the audience sort of were like, okay, I'm a bit more on board with this now. It's a bit more sort of Velvet Underground influence, which in New York at the time, playing with the New York Dolls and early Suicide, Suicide the band, they're very kind of art, I don't know, not even art rock, art pop.
Yeah.
Experimental. Then they performed Hospital, which was met with a mixture of laughter and applause. I think he left quite extended gaps in between the vocals as well.
Right.
I've recounted the lyrics last time, and you laughed out loud. It's like, I go to bakeries all day long.
Yeah.
There's a lack of sweetness in my life.
Oh, yeah.
It's like stuff like that, which is just so on the nose, so on the cusp of being a bit. But then they finished on the song A Plea for Tenderness, which was always going to rely on an atmosphere of goodwill and good intent. And the song was punctuated from abuse from the audience, making Jonathan's line, "You can't scare a man who's praying for you now," even more poignant. As the song went on, Jonathan became more and more emotional, breaking into falsetto and his eyes filling with tears. It ended with him beating his chest as he shuddered through his words, and the crowd was faced with the rawness of the emotion he was living. The audience was actually stunned in the end. And New York, in all its crazy abashments, stood still for a moment as they had won the crowd over.
God, is there? I assume there's not a recording of that.
Not that I've found, but
wow,
yeah,
that'd be quite.
Especially early, like the early Lovers before they. I feel like there was more recordings of like the later stuff after they released this album
Yeah.
posthumously after breaking up, and then it was Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, I believe. So
Right.
different band. But, then as a victory lap, they broke out into Roadrunner, and the farewell message was, we're the Modern Lovers, we'll see you some other time.
Yeah. Wow.
David Burson, on behalf of Warner Bros., finally signed the Modern Lovers in 1973, agreeing that John Cale would produce their debut album, which was going to be recorded in LA. Looking for a manager, they invited a bunch of candidates to come see the Modern Lovers support Aerosmith in Boston. It's really, it
Just
shows...
the story just twists and turns.
It shows how like disparate they were from the rest of the music scene, that the only people they could get to support, they were like, right, well, I guess we'll put them on with Aerosmith.
They just, kind of didn't know what to do with them, I guess.
No,
also.
because they were so ahead of their time.
Yeah.
But again, this the thing with that kind of music is the next big thing, is what everyone was looking for, you know. So maybe.
Yeah.
Due to an administrative mix-up, when the band took the stage, all of the managers who were invited were out having dinner. They were just all like having a booked dinner for them when they were supposed to be seeing the Lovers.
Oh.
So someone messed up there. But unfazed, the Modern Lovers invited them back to their basement, where they invited a bunch of friends and recreated the live set. Afterwards, they were told to interview each candidate, and Burson encouraged them to discuss money. But of course, the Lovers discussed every subject but that. Among questions were, what books do you read? An effort to find someone with the qualities that Ernie described earlier, perhaps. No one made the grade. By this time, John Felice had enough. He said, I'm going to leave this band. I'm going to start my new group, The Real Kids.
So were they all kind of like on board with Jonathan's idea? Because I remember you did talk about it a bit last time, but are they on board a bit more with his ideas about how they should live their lives?
Don't think so. I think they recognise that Jonathan's a personality.
Yeah.
And they're like, this guy has got something. And they recognise that. I think they all, they obviously chipped in with the music, and I think Jerry's synth parts and organ parts are really cool. I think, I think they've invested so much at this point. They're like, well, we're so close, we're getting signed by a record deal. Stick it out. And I do feel, but their tensions are rising. And John Felice mentioned the fact that he left because the atmosphere wasn't what it used to be. And he said there was an inability to agree, stone silence at rehearsals, and a frustration born of what had now been the breakdown of several sets of negotiations with managers and record companies. And John Felice was also not fussed about going to California. So in the spring, they accepted a live residency at a hotel in Bermuda.
What?
They stayed for 3 weeks, which was on what was no more than a paid vacation, playing between the Esso Steel Band and Fiery Limbo Dancer.
That sounds fucking sick. That sounds so cool.
The middle-aged holiday goers were not impressed by the Modern Lovers, with many walking out mid-set and the band's set becoming shorter and shorter. In a desperate effort to try and counter this, they started including covers of Rolling Stones songs like Brown Sugar.
What?
It's a miracle they weren't fired before their tenancy was up.
Yeah.
During this time, though, Jonathan fell in love with calypso music.
Oh, yeah.
After discovering the Bermuda Strollers. He would later write Here Comes the Martians and Egyptian reggae and that sort of vein.
Yeah.
This influence aligned with Jonathan's new development attitude for a new era in his life. It was one that would clash with the band's want to stick with the music they loved and had made over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Around this time, also, there's an interview for Andy Warhol's it's just called Interview magazine by Scott Cohen. The book said it was in Spin magazine, but I did my own research and couldn't find. I only found it attributed to Andy.
What's
Warhol.
the author's name again?
Scott Huck Cohen.
You're wrong, Scott.
Oh no, the author of the book. I can't remember.
Oh right, Tim Mitchell.
Tim Mitchell.
But
there's a really funny interview. I only found half of it online, but it said some funny quotes on his dream date. He was like, a date when you spend the whole time dreaming. That's my idea of a dream date. It's at night.
He's so corny. What?
It's at night under the stars. I could be right here.
Fucking hell, John.
And he was talking about like his sort of views on love and modern love.
Right.
And, he said about writing music for guys that don't fuck. He says that makes me write.
That should be the title of this episode: Music for Guys Who Don't Fuck.
The quote is, "That makes me write a song that says you're not inferior because you don't fuck. In fact, that would be the title of the song. And if I see girls thinking, where's the man who understands these dreams? I would write a song called I'm the man who understands, just like all men can." But the most notorious quote from this interview was that hopes that everyone would get along better with dogs and cats because that would help us to get along better with people.
Oh.
And that the band would play softer because he believes that any group that would hurt the ears of infants, and this is no joke, sucks.
It's quite sweet, really.
Yeah, he's very naive. Jonathan.
Yeah.
So summer of 1973, the band left for California to record their first album. An album that would take all of their experience and hopefully culminate in their best works. Their brief stints in California previously had given them some insight into the area. I think they all quite liked it, but living there became with its own struggles, especially with the climate, and Jonathan was struggling with that. A lot of things they despised in modern culture were not merely around, they were embedded on that East Coast, and Warner Bros. Used the opportunity to monitor the band because they were close by now. So they gigged over the summer, including the Tower of Power gig I mentioned last episode, with a bunch of rednecks. Really didn't like them, started throwing bottles at them.
Right, okay, yeah.
So yeah, it all just went completely to pot. They renewed their connection with Matthew Kaufman, who originally flew out
Yes, okay. Yeah,
earlier on.
yeah. You said remember this name.
Remember this name. He also made an offer to the band to manage them again, but they were refused. And I think a sign of the fact that the Mon Lovers, there was a strain in the band, Matthew also took Jonathan aside and said an offer that he would be happy to manage him solo.
Oh. Sign of things to come.
Shows around this time, Jonathan found it difficult to perform the older Modern Lovers stuff. For whatever reason, he was disconnected with the naivety of some of the songs, felt they were too pointed and aimed, and he would move towards more open, free, and good-hearted attitudes in his songwriting. The new material he wrote, the quieter stuff, he would perform with conviction, however, like "Falling in Love Must Be Two Ways." Warner Bros. Rented a house in Van Nuys?
Van Nuys?
Van Nuys?
Is Van...
Nuys.
Yeah, Van Nuys. I think... Oh, yeah, anyway, go on.
Suburb of LA. Before them, Emmylou Harris had been staying in the house.
Oh, nice.
You know Emmylou Harris?
Of course I do.
Collaborator of Graham Parsons?
Yes, well, she's a bit more than that, but yeah.
Graham Parsons had a cabin out in the valley, and the Modern Lovers soon got to know him. They would visit him and play guitar with him, and apparently there was even talks of collaboration before it was cut short by tragedy.
Oh, yeah, he died young, didn't he?
But they regularly used to play softball games together, and
really?
Ernie
That's cool.
remembers a drunk Parsons attempting miniature golf with them.
You ever heard... Well, she's... Emmylou's on the Oh Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, is she?
Yeah, she sings with Gillian Welsh.
Oh, nice.
On I'll Fly Away. Yeah.
Oh, sick, I love that one.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Warner Bros. As well as John Cale were keen to get the band into the studio. They booked their first session at Elektra Studios, where the Stooges had recorded their first album, with Cale at the helm.
Nice.
The
Stooges album was with John Cale? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is another sort of bit of cred that encouraged the Modern Lovers to want to record with them. They were delighted to find the Oriental rug from the album's cover was still on the floor there. While Cale wanted to take the confrontational energy that he remembered and push it a stage further, Jonathan was sort of headed in the other direction. He wanted to strip back and reduce instrumentation. He'd already changed some of the lyrics to smooth down what he saw as the harsh edges, and he also wanted to drop a lot of the older songs, so he could no longer authentically perform them. Once Cale tried to draw anger out of him, telling him to attack the microphone, but Jonathan replied that he did not feel angry and would not fake it. Oh. And the pressure was rising now for them to make the album. Among all of this came the discussion that perhaps the music was never meant to be captured in the confines of a studio. Maybe the magic was only in the unpredictability of a live setting. This, of course, pissed off John Cale. You've been signed to record the studio album of the band. They're like, maybe this isn't. We're never supposed to do it this way.
Maybe none of this is right. Fucking hell.
He says he remembers the sessions being a catch-22 at every turn, and he felt sorry for Jonathan because the sessions were directionless and the material was rehearsed to death. It was like picking scabs for Jonathan. He quoted, John Cale said, "At the end, he didn't trust me, and I don't know why. Something happened, and that broke it with me. I thought, I don't know why this is happening, but it's painful. I'm going to leave. what happened basically was that Jonathan had success that he didn't want, and as soon as the contract was signed, something happened that altered his view of record making, and he became very contrary. So John Cale believed it's a self-destructive kind of role in him.
Sounds very similar to Fred Neil.
Yeah. I mean, it's psychologically, maybe it's a common thing in some people where it's just like you get to that point where it's like push comes to shove, and you're like, oh, I'm just like, it's like anxiety. Like going to the top of a slide and being like, oh no, I don't want to go down.
Yeah, like you're looking at something you really want to do it, and then getting to it just I think a lot about Bob Dylan and how he is all everybody who's like known him has always been like he's a troubadour. You know, he performs for the sake of it, and quite how I mean he obviously got over whatever that kind of initial fear is, and then but like just made music whatever he wanted to do all the time and just reinvented himself constantly. Obviously that was quite a new thing, but just like doing music for the sake of doing music.
I think he was never afraid to be bad.
But I think it almost helped Bob that he got really famous really quick and then like kind of acclimatized to it very quick.
I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say I think it's quite good that he had that first album which completely tanked. Because he had that experience of being like, I put this stuff out and I did my best at the time and I felt like it was good stuff, but it's bombed. And then he went through the failure, and then after that, it was like it felt like he carried that through, and he's like, I don't care what I don't care what people say.
Yeah.
And it got him to some really high places, and also got to some pretty low places in the 80s.
Yeah.
The recording sessions for Lovers were terminated before a single song was completed. With the benefit of hindsight, the sessions they'd done a year prior with John Cale would have been the perfect way to record the songs.
Yeah.
Their main reason for signing with Warner Brothers (John Cale) was out of the picture. Warner Brothers enlisted Kim Fowley to try and talk the band and motivate them to form a salvageable product at this point. Warner Brothers were just seeing their investment going up in smoke and seeing what they could do to pad that out. So the band were happy to work with Kim Fowley, and they booked 24-track Gold Star Studios, where Phil Spector recorded most of his work.
Oof.
During a sit-in at rehearsal, he recognised most of the materials from his last rendezvous with the band, but he noticed the changes in the material and how Jonathan was sort of driving a wedge between himself and the band. He continued into the studio, with Fowley remembering that Richman insisted everyone hide behind the glass under the console while he recorded his vocals in the dark.
I always get it confused. It was Phil Spector that killed a person, was it? Or was it George?
I think so.
Yeah, he got... Because I always get confused with that and George Martin.
No,
George Martin was the Beatles.
George Martin's a saint.
Yeah.
It was Phil Spector. Guy called Phil Kaufman, I believe, worked with him. He comes into this story very shortly.
Kaufman.
Phil Kaufman, I think his name was. He was tour manager for like the Rolling Stones and a few other bands. Very notorious tour manager.
Right.
And also had some links with Charles Manson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That guy was going around in the late 60s.
Literally, actually, the next line of my notes. At one point, Phil Kaufman remembers being instructed to lock the band in the rehearsal room and not give them food or water until they had a particular take.
Jesus.
Because they were just being so hard to work with, I guess. Jerry was taking up playing more guitar at this point. Jonathan gave him his Telecaster. Jerry was frustrated with Jonathan's guitar playing. He says he recalls a stark difference in the early sort of Lou Reed style of Jonathan's guitar playing and his later, cleaner, bluesier, more joyful sound. And he chalks it up into the period up until which he hated Chuck Berry, and then the following period in which he decided he loved Chuck Berry. Sessions went surprisingly smoother than with Cale, however, and Jonathan resigned to doing some of the older material. Maybe he was hungry. The session sounded pretty good, but the lyrics were toned down a lot. She Cracked was less about self-hate and about understanding the girl in the song, and I'm Straight has Jonathan exclaiming, I like Hippie Johnny, and is the one that appears on the final album. I Want to Sleep in Your Arms and Government Centre were also recorded here, which I believe are the ones that you find on the album. I won't lie, some of the compiling of the records is a bit of a mess. Like on Wikipedia it's attributed to some stuff, the book says differently, and it is a little bit he said, she said, but I'm going off I'm going off of the Wikipedia article.
Right. Yeah, he's almost like you have to like go to like the source almost with some of that stuff. It's just hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you had each pressing of the albums, it'd be quite easy to see. It'd
Yeah,
probably
true.
be this was recorded at this studio, but yeah, I would love to own that album if I ever see it. But I feel like it's more of a thing you find in America than in the UK.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I guess probably didn't make it much over here really.
In attendance at these Gold Star sessions was Graham Parsons.
Oh yeah.
The Lovers had visited him while he was recording Return of the Grievous Angel.
Great
He was returning
album.
the favour.
You ever listen to that album?
No.
Oh, it's so good. I listened to it, well, only fairly recently actually. That and his other one, really, really good, both of them.
I've never delved into Graham Parsons. I don't even know.
I mean, he only had 2 albums. And
Or
he
what he
died at
sounds like.
26. Yeah, great. Obviously, it was in the Fred story. They had a duet with him.
Kim Fowley remembers he liked those guys. I was surprised because he was such a macho guy with his drinking and drugging, but he actually liked their music and thought it was good. Jonathan Richman and the boys were worshipped by Graham Parsons, and they worshipped him back. Which is just, it's an interesting sort of friendship for them to strike out.
Yeah, because I mean, Graham Parsons, I mean, he would have been, he wasn't really a hippie like the same as the rest of them, but like, I don't know, he also wasn't like, he was a, I want to say straight-laced, but he wasn't straight-laced.
I was going to say, it wasn't long after these sessions
he died in
that Parsons died in a drug-fueled visit to a motel.
Yeah.
And he died of an overdose. So yeah, he wasn't straight edge at all. He was very drinking and drugging, which is the opposite of the Modern Lovers sort of.
But I don't know, he was different from his contemporaries in a lot of ways. I don't know. I'm trying to find the words to describe him, but it's escaping me. But yeah, no.
So the Lovers
cool
only
guy.
really knew him a short time, and they considered him a good friend. And he even came to their aid during that Tower of Power gig when things got out of hand.
Oh, really?
But obviously, him passing sort of brought up the trauma of Miss Christine the year prior, and was just another blow of what was becoming bleak prospects for the band.
Yeah.
Parsons was due to be buried in his home in Jacksonville, but Phil Kaufman felt this was not what he wanted. So Phil Kaufman stole the body, and he took it to Joshua Tree National Monument in the desert, where he tried to cremate it.
I was gonna do it. I was gonna do an episode. I was gonna try to do an episode on Graham, but yeah, he moves the body and he gets caught for it, doesn't he? Because Graham Parsons loved Joshua Tree, and wanted to be his ashes to be spread there, but he got caught. I didn't know it was Phil Kaufman that did that.
Yeah, so he was arrested on his return home from a day of recording with the Lovers. And he says, I got arrested for stealing Graham's body. I left the studio on my motorcycle, my old Harley, and I came back to this. They never charged us for stealing the body. They just charged us for stealing the coffin. But he'd previously been in jail with Charles Manson. So the press just went to town on him, and they were just talking about this like story of him stealing the body and making it some weird culty thing almost, and probably blowing out of proportion. He was fined $1,300. So he started a benefit gig. All with K's, Kaufman's Coffin Caper Concert. At which,
that's 4
K's, I don't know.
I mean, maybe you're right with 4.
But the Lovers played at that gig. And the recording was going well, but Jonathan was causing more friction, as he stated that while he agreed to do the older material in the studio, he would not be playing it live. The label were not happy to hear this. Like, we're putting out an album and you're going to be touring it, and you're not going to play the fucking material. So, over the phone to David Burson, Jonathan repeated that sort of sentiment, and David Burson was sort of the last person fighting in their corner. He's like, just believe in these boys. After every little hiccup, he was the one.
Yeah.
But after even this, he was like, I can't get behind this. So Warner Brothers dropped all the financial backing, and they were booted from that house in California. And in December 1973, they all returned to Boston, except Jonathan, who stayed in California. For David, their 3 months in California was deeply depressing, and it was the final straw. This is the other David, the drummer.
Yeah.
He quit the band. Jerry and Ernie still believed, and they got another drummer. Jonathan sent over the material he was working on in California to Boston on a Studio Ace tape. And it was Jonathan accompanied by maracas, tambourine, and slapping his knees. He ran through the recent Lovers songs, and he was quoted from around this time saying, I actually worry about Ernie and Jerry. I hope they can get in, but I don't really know what they're doing. He said, maybe we should ... Well, obviously they realise that I've got the key here. They'll realise it by now if they didn't. He just sent over these kooky recordings of him with maracas and He really believed in that stuff. And I don't think Jerry and Ernie were too fussed about it.
Yeah.
But he was right. How are they going to fit into this new iteration of the band? He was writing a number of new love songs. Awkward Love was one of these, and it was about waiting for love and putting up with a number of girls' boyfriends and the loneliness that ensues until his love eventually succeeds. This was actually about his future wife, Gail, and would end up ringing quite true to his life story with her. He'd met her at a lovers gig months prior, and she had exclaimed, "We love you," in the audience. He'd sensed right away that she was the one for him, and after meeting her, fell in love with her. It'd be another 4 years until this came to fruition, though, and over those 4 years, she had a son in her first marriage. And their only contact was through intermittent letters. And despite the initial lack of reciprocity, he continued to write songs for her and will her love into his mind. Despite Warner Brothers withdrawing financial backing, they were still signed by the label, and they got a new manager who booked some shows with a new lineup, and just to prove to the label they were still commercially viable. On the 26th and 27th of January 1974, they played the Townhouse in New York. Again, Jonathan insisted in reducing the volumes to new lows, and Ernie began to detect a perversity in Jonathan's attitude, or perhaps, as Cale would notice, a fear of success. The band played one of Jonathan's songs, "Hey There Little Insect," with Jerry and Ernie reluctantly doing backing vocals, singing "Buzz Buzz." At one point, Jonathan instructed the band to leave the stage while he kept time with a baseball glove.
Kept time with a baseball glove?
Yeah, just hitting... and singing, I guess.
Right, I see.
Hey there, little insect. I don't know what the sound of that would be like, just slapping leather.
Yeah, it's not really going to make a big noise.
But yeah, something weird about his obsession with baseball, and like like they said when he moved to California and he was staying in that house that Emmylou Harris stayed in, he had like 3 possessions in his room. One of them was a baseball glove, one of them was a guitar. It's like
America's pastime.
Yeah, it's true.
Very wholesome, really.
Yeah, I mean, he reminds me of like an American sort of mischievous, like Charlie Brown kind of vibe.
Yeah, it's almost like almost an obsession with pieces of Americana.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
like Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, you talk about that like him with Howard Jones, the restaurant that he was like obsessed with, stuff that he could see from the highway. Like the highway, that's a very like an Americana type thing.
It's like if we were to become obsessed with like Toby Carvery and Wetherspoons.
Yeah.
Be like Burger Club Tuesdays. Hey. So they received a poor review for this show in Variety magazine. The author found banality in the lyrics and was unsure that they would have a future. And they commented on the contrast of Jonathan's quiet intros and the band's loud rock and roll sound, as well as Jonathan's new look, sporting a moustache.
Hell yeah, Johnny.
Have you seen?
And you'll see someone else here.
There's a picture of Jonathan Richman with a moustache. I think it's from a cover of Abdul and Cleopatra, which is a really great tune. It's just him singing about Abdul waiting for Cleopatra and yearning. But it's just a bop. And it's got that kind of... It's got Calypso in it, I guess. Yeah. And there's a picture of Jonathan Richman with his little, like, dirty pedo tash. So good. So, yeah.
Classic.
Got into...
Great way to reinvent yourself, John.
I agree. For David Burson at Warner Brothers, after this gig, there was to be no relaunch of the band. And in February, the band played a gig at a club called Sandy's in Beverly. By now, Jonathan was completely unwilling to play Roadrunner, despite the band trying to change his mind on stage and people in the audience calling for it. Oh. Jonathan kept complaining that the band were too loud, while Jerry was complaining that his vocals were too loud. In contrast to that.
Right.
It was at this point that Jerry told Jonathan that he's quitting the band. They were obliged to finish the show and continue on the second set. And
he told them mid-set that he was quitting
Jerry
the band?
Did, yeah.
Wow.
Because I think the tension has gotten to a point. And I think Jonathan was just being so annoying about the sound.
He does sound very hard to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the issue is, I think Jonathan wanted to just go solo, really. But So they played 3 encores as well, and they ended with some improvisation while Jonathan attempted to explain his need for silence and how no one understood it. Which, in my mind, is just the band fucking about that it's our last show, and Jonathan's like, "And we need things to be quiet. People can't hear the lyrics." Like old man shouts at cloud. At the end of the gig, their newest drummer, Bob Turner, informed him that he was quitting band, and
Jesus.
and Ernie, I love Ernie. He sounds like Jonathan's right hand man. Like he just doesn't. he wasn't opposed to working with Jonathan again, but from this moment on, the Modern Lovers effectively ceased to exist, and this gig was their last. There is a really cute video I found online of like the Jonathan Richman playing live like 10 years later, and he goes, "Now I'm going to welcome to the stage one of the original Modern Lovers, Ernie Brooks," and then they play like Roadrunner or something, and it's just like.
And now we're going to bring up a member of the original Modern Lovers, Ernie Brooks.
They've obviously worked out over the indifferences, and it's more of them just reliving the old days, and it's kind of sweet. 1974, band done, last gig. But the Modern Loves debut was released in 1976 to a rapturous reception, and has been regularly re-released since. Cover versions of their song have been done by John Cale, the Sex Pistols, Susie and the Banshees, and R.E.M. to name a few. David moved on to play drums for the Pop, DMZ, and the Cars. Which, have you heard the Cars?
No.
They're like an 80s band, I believe. I think they've got some tunes.
Yeah.
Jerry went on to play with someone called Elliot Murphy, his own band, Casual God, and of course the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
Ernie played in the band Casual God with him for a time, as well as with Elliot Murphy and a band called The Necessaries. At the time that book that I'm taking a lot of sources from was written, which was in 1999, they had all met Jonathan recently and are getting on with him better than ever.
Wow.
I will just shout out the book, actually. Let me grab it. So, There's Something About Jonathan.
By Tim Mitchell.
By Tim Mitchell. The only book I could really find on him. So it's good to have this in existence. It's obviously a bit of a cult following with Jonathan. The name, There's Something About Jonathan, comes from There's Something About Mary.
Right.
Which is a kind of comedy movie with... it's got Cameron Diaz. I can't remember who the main guy is.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, Cameron. Yeah. Why?
He's in it. He does He does some of the music for it, and he's actually in it playing guitar.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never seen that film. It's
just a completely silly rom-com.
Yeah.
There's like a bit where like she uses cum as like hair gel or something.
Oh.
It's got like some really silly joke like that, kind of like grown-ups vibes.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. But Jonathan was involved in that project at a later date. But yeah, as it stands, Modern Lovers are no more. And it's 1974. We'll see how the career goes on.
So in all of that, we went 2 years. Is that?
I think it's been like 4 or 5 years since 1969 was when Jonathan was first hanging out with the Velvet Underground.
Right.
That was when Jonathan was sort of solo, put the band together. The Modern Lovers probably existed from 70 to 74. Yeah. All in all, and just it's at the beginning of the episode I was talking about how they had all this promise and this article, this rave article, and just within 2 years they were completely on their arse. No label, no nothing. No management.
Mostly thanks to John being quite hard to work with. Yeah.
But hey, he's got a book written about him, so
the rest of them don't.
Who's the real one? But yeah, that sums up this episode on Jonathan Richman.
Cool.
We'll
Thanks
see
very
you in
much.
the next part.
See you later.